Welcome to Smash Fiction, the podcast where we pit two or more fictional characters against one another in a battle of strength, or wits, or narcissism, or alcoholism, racism, homophobia. We kind of got our pick with this one. Anyway, this week, Lucille Bluth versus Malory Archer. Well, hello, Miss Lemon. What a pleasant surprise. Oh, I'm just as happy as a clam at high tide, thank you. Oh, well, you know me, I'm not one to complain, but not once since our show ended has someone from the old crew at TGS called me unless they were trying to get a favor from me. Given my new important position as president of NBC, I was starting to think that nobody there even really liked. Oh yeah, you want a job? Oh, I'd love to help, but I'm afraid I'm not able to get you a writing job here at NBC right now. Well, yes, I am still technically the president of NBC, but it's kind of a long story. You see, NBC hasn't exactly had the best 3 years since I took over from a business-type perspective, what with people watching their Hulus and their Pokemon Go's and those gosh darn podcasts I keep hearing about. It's really hard to get those gosh darn American eyeballs on television screens nowadays. And so, to get the company through this little rough patch, I made a hard business decision and sold some of our studio space on the 65th floor of 30 Rock as office space. And then I had to basically sell all of it, and it ended up getting bought by two companies. The first one's a real estate development firm called the Bluth Company, and right now they're being run by a real swell lady named Lucille Bluth, although sometimes some of the things that she says to me seem to indicate that she thinks I'm some sort of bellhop and that this building is some sort of hotel, and if that is the case, sometimes she says things to me that no one should ever say to a bellhop, regardless of how poor of service one receives. But you know me, I'm not one to complain. The second one is bought by another company that I'm not really sure what they do. I think they might be a travel agency. Sometimes I hear them setting off what sounds like a bunch of fireworks in there, which I don't think the fire marshal would like if he were to hear about it. I went in to speak about the noise with the woman who runs things in there, a gal by the name of Malory Archer, and I think the glass that she was drinking her iced tea out of must have slipped out of her hand, because something hit me hard on the side of the head, and I lost consciousness for a bit there, but you know me, I'm not one to complain. So, right now, the National Broadcasting Corporation is not making any new shows for the fall block, and it's looking like right now our fall schedule is going to be 93% advertisements, 5.5% government-mandated public service announcements, and 2.5% reruns of The Biggest Loser and Heroes Reborn, the only two series that we still have the rights to.
Shoot me in the face now.
My offices are currently a room which up until recently was a broom closet, but once I took the broom out of there, it became quite a bit more spacious. I then learned from the cleaning staff that the broom would in fact need to remain in the closet when it was not in use. I can only get cell phone reception when I am crouched a certain way in the mop sink, and that is where I'm currently receiving your call from. So even with all these cuts, NBC still couldn't buy a hummingbird on a string for a nickel, so in order to make what the kids call some extra cabbage, I started working part-time as an assistant to both these fine women, and they're keeping me busier than a moth in a mitten. I'm just doing the sorts of things you'd expect, disposing of boxes of documents in the Hudson River for Miss Bluth, cleaning what I assume are tomato juice stains out of the carpet for Miss Archer, and restocking both their office minibars each morning. I tell you what, both these ladies are awful thirsty. Anywho, if I were the type to complain, I'd say that one of these ladies might just someday bust my buttons so much that I would up and quit. Right now, the only thing keeping me here is the fact that on the day I got this job here at NBC, a fortune teller told me that if I ever stopped working at this building, a hole would open in reality, and dark tendrils would reach out from beyond space and time and feed my soul to the unspeakable ungods that live in the spaces between spaces. And also, you know me, I'm not one to complain. So, which of these two master will breakers will be the first to break the will of the always affable Kenneth Parcell? Which of them will finally be the one to get him to turn in his blue blazer and turn his back on the offices of 30 Rockefeller Plaza once and for all? I don't know, I'm still coming down from the bourbon and Vicodin and hot flashes right now, so I'm gonna leave it to you four to handle. I'm just gonna curl up in a ball in the corner and softly murmur slurred and slightly racist proclamations about the world today. Representing Team Lucille Bluth are Kit Mulcairn.
I'd rather be dead in California than alive in Arizona.
Oh.
Yeah.
And it's all true.
Hey.
Wow, you didn't even have to change that quote. That's like
I know.
And Dan Mulcairn.
I don't know who that is, and I don't care to find out.
Awesome. Representing Team Malory Archer are Miles Schneiderman.
If I cared what Lucille Bluth did in this office, I'd stick a shotgun in my mouth and pull the trigger with my toes.
And returning to the show, friend of the show, Anton Balane.
Miles, if we don't win this match of Smash Fiction, I will literally die.
Yay, Anton.
To see who is going first this week, I have a challenge for the
Yay!
So, as you know, both of these characters are played by the amazing Jessica Walter. There's another iconic character that she played earlier in her career, though, by the name of Fran Sinclair. On what television show did the character of Fran Sinclair appear?
That would be Dinosaurs.
Very nice job.
Contrary to what you may hear on the street, she was the mama.
Surprise, surprise. Typecast 20 years ago.
All right, so that means that Team Lucille Bluth will be going first this week. Team Lucille Bluth. Here's some money. Go watch a Star Wars.
Kenneth Parcell has had to work under some difficult conditions before, from Tracy Jordan's strange flights of fancy to Jenna Maroney's Kafka-esque narcissism. To work with Malory and her staff of idiot savants would feel like your typical New York workday, albeit a bit more bloody. But hey, Kenneth is used to blood. He grew up on a farm. He even ate his father pig. Long story. Lucille Bluth is a sociopath the likes of which Kenneth has never before experienced. She regularly puts her own comfort and safety before that of her children, like when she had Buster directly and repeatedly inhale her secondhand smoke just so she could get around a bizarre loophole in her building's no smoking policy. She also enlists Buster in the army just to keep him from reuniting with his real father, who happens to be her husband's brother. Oh, and perhaps my favorite, she adopted a child from Korea just to spite Buster for not eating his cottage cheese. But Buster's not the only soul unfortunate enough to be in close contact with Lucille. When she was driving with her son Michael, she came across a man on a Segway and thought it was her oldest son Job, so she decided to give him a little scare with her car. Well, she's a shit driver and wound up getting into an accident where Michael suffered head trauma that also knocked him out. Thinking quickly, she pulled Michael out of the car and into the driver's seat so that it would look like he had been driving. And luckily for her, Michael's head trauma caused him temporary memory loss, so that he believed he was in fact the one driving, and whenever his memory began to return, Lucille repeatedly whacked him on the head to keep him from remembering. Ruthless, quick-thinking, conniving. Oh, and let's not forget her passive-aggressive criticism that she's perfected to an art form. To quote a comment about her maid, "Lose that coat cost more than your house." Oh, that's how we joke. She doesn't even have a house. And my favorite, about her daughter Lindsay, she thinks I'm too critical. That's another fault of hers. Her egocentricity, coupled with her masterful manipulation of others, landed her a cushy life as the wife of a real estate CEO. And even when her husband's poor choices threatened to change everything, she used her ruthless and tactical mind to make the best of every new hardship. In the episode In God We Trust, Lucille's children Michael and Lindsay show signs of becoming friends. Lucille, sensing the threat that her unified children could potentially pose to her, works to undo this friendship immediately with pointed accuracy and maximum efficiency. She uses every interaction with them to gain information, plant seeds of doubt, and weave mistrust, coming out of every conversation in a better tactical position than she was before. She handily plays the two of them against each other and quickly has them at each other's throats. Keep in mind, Michael and Lindsay know what she's trying to do and actively work against it, and Lucille's machinations still win out. She's basically the 21st century Iago. Despite the constant readiness of her children and family members, Lucille always manages to pull the wool over everyone's eyes and make them dance like her own little group of marionettes.
Malory Archer has had a career of black ops and espionage, and has experience running a spy agency, albeit one which is largely unsuccessful, and which was shut down twice by the government for gross incompetence, but I digress. On first glance, Malory seems to have a more successful career than Lucille Bluth does, as Lucille's financial stability is largely dependent upon the success of her husband's company. But this isn't a test to see who has the better spy skills, or who can run a company better. This is a match to break one Kenneth Parcell, and while Malory has skills aplenty, when it comes to inducing pure psychic torment, Malory has nothing on Lucille. Hell, Emma Frost has nothing on Lucille. Malory is bossy and commanding. She makes her intentions clear and is eager to order around her underlings. But you'll notice that rarely do any of the employees at ISIS actually obey her with anything other than the bare minimum of enthusiasm, and often under great protest. We see people at ISIS straight up ignoring Malory and her orders a good portion of the time. We see that she's regarded as annoying, as someone yelling racist things in your workplace on a regular basis would be, but no one really seems to fear or respect her. On the other hand, every Bluth has to be constantly on guard for Lucille, as they have experienced a lifetime of her constant manipulations and not so passive aggression. To Lucille, social interactions are a constant battle, and in this battle, she is unbeaten. She manages to turn even apparent defeat into victory. There's a moment in My Mother the Car when her children find out that she's been manipulating them and they confront her, but Lucille uses this moment to wring such quantities of pity and sympathy out of her children that they do a complete 180 and go from distrust and anger to fawning apologies in seconds. A situation that would see any other mastermind undone is just another opportunity for her to exercise her will and control over those she surveys. So, we see that Lucille is a gifted sadist whose ability to manipulate comes as easily as breathing. But let's look now at neither Lucille nor at Malory, but at Kenneth. Kenneth is bright and optimistic, a golden-hearted go-getter who takes great pride in even the most humiliating and disgusting tasks. If Malory yells orders at him, even conflicting orders, Kenneth will feel right at home and grateful for such a definite sense of purpose. We see in the episode The Ballad of Kenneth Parcell that Kenneth not only expects such treatment, but he actively seeks it out. If Malory gets drunk and yells at him, he'll feel compelled to stage an intervention, or maybe read from the pre-Prohibition era temperance movement literature he himself wrote. It'll just remind him of working to keep Tracy Jordan together. If Malory attempts to seduce him, as she does employees like Cyril and Pam, well, we see what happens in the 30 Rock episode The Aftermath when Jenna kisses Kenneth. He responds, "I guess we have to get married now." If Malory keeps it together, Kenneth will see her as a boss to follow. If she doesn't, Kenneth will see her as a lost soul who needs to be brought back to the flock. His good nature won't allow him to walk away from this sad woman who is more harmful to herself than any KGB assassin is. As Kenneth once said to Tracy Jordan, "You are in dire need of a getting your act together montage." But we see one instance in 30 Rock where even Kenneth's sense of duty is worn away. In the appropriately named episode 210, Kenneth packs up his bags and hops on the midnight train to Georgia. He misses it, but that's not the point. The reason he decides to call it quits is because he feels like his time in New York City has corrupted and changed him. And Lucille Bluth has built her entire life upon manipulating and changing people to suit her own needs, whether they're aware of it or not. Once Kenneth realizes that he's been manipulated and twisted into something unrecognizable, once he realizes that Mrs. Bluth has inceptioned him into something he considers different and corrupt, well, that's unacceptable. Kenneth has a great deal of patience and love for people who are flawed and misguided, but ultimately redeemable. But for someone as downright evil to the core as Lucille is, he'll want to get out of there before she gets the chance to do her completely accurate chicken impression.
Team Malory Archer. Both of you, imagine shutting up.
So as you alluded to at the beginning, Colin, both these characters are racist, elitist, homophobic, narcissistic, alcoholic, controlling, manipulating, negligent mothers. Both have managed to do quite a number on their children over the years, not to mention anyone else foolish enough to cross them, but when it comes to ruining a life, and I mean crushing it, twisting and warping an otherwise normal soul, taking a living, breathing human being and grinding it beneath a single stiletto heel, just pure destruction of everything that makes somebody functional and emotionally healthy, sinking your teeth into the soft, fleshy throat of one person's self-esteem and sense of purpose, and just ripping it out of the still twitching body, spattering the walls in blood before spitting the severed ligaments of basic humanity onto the floor, and when it comes to that, Lucille Bluth is the Ned Stark's execution to Malory Archer's gore-bedecked Red Wedding. Lucille is mean to her kids and stuff, sure, but when you get right down to it, she's just another wealthy socialite who drowns herself in booze and acts shitty to everybody, except maybe Jean Parmesan. Malory Archer, though? Malory Archer actively fucks you over, tactically and ruthlessly, no matter who you are, starting with her own family. There's a scene in the episode The Double Deuce, where Malory, charged with looking after the infant Seamus, who isn't actually her grandson, offers the baby a stuffed bee to play with. The quote runs as follows: "What's that? That's a bumblebee. You want a pretty bumblebee? There you go." At which point she tosses the stuffed bumblebee over her shoulder, eliciting tears from the wee baby Seamus. The quote continues, "Aw, what's the matter? What happened? Did somebody trick you? See? That's how the world works, dear, and I'm the only one you can trust. Dude, come on! This is the woman who bought her kid a new bike, then stole it, and beat him with a ping pong paddle for letting it get stolen. As distinct from the time she did the same thing to him as an adult, only with a spy car. The one time Malory and Sterling actually have a legitimately sweet mother-son moment, she has to talk him out of spoiling it, and then she spoils it herself by simply saying, ass. She destroyed that kid. But Malory doesn't need to start from infancy. She's just as terrible to her employees, often putting them through meticulously staged and executed hell for her own benefit. The lengths she'll go to protect her sex tapes are the stuff of legend, and include emptying out the 401k of every ISIS employee. She tricked her entire staff into helping her dispose of a man she murdered and clean up the crime scene to get the cops off her back. When negotiating over wages with Cyril's impromptu labor union, from within the elevator she'd barricaded herself inside, she refused to agree to a cost of living adjustment, even to save Sterling's and Lana's lives, responding to Krieger's bellowed, "What's it gonna be, you old hag? You ever want to see your son again?" with a pause, and then, "Not the number you quoted me." And of course, I would be remiss not to mention the fact that ISIS was operating illegally for the first 4 seasons of the show, the revelation of which eventually led Malory and her staff to become a drug cartel by the way of the literal ton of cocaine stashed in her office. Look me in the eyes, or I guess look at the computer screen and I guess speak clearly into the microphone? Yeah. And tell me you can visualize Kenneth Parcell selling cocaine. I think they revoke your wings for that. It's bad enough just working for Malory and getting verbally abused, underpaid, shot, R.I.P. Brett, left for dead, woven into multiple layers of intrigue, and possibly discovering you're a genetic clone of Adolf Hitler. That's the best result. When Malory Archer actually takes interest in you, she doesn't stop until you're a blithering mass of neurosis, head-jerking as your mind experiences Nam-esque flashbacks while your lips dementedly stammer out random, one-word descriptions of her unforgivable crimes.
You know, Lucille Bluth. Let me tell you about her. She has had rivals in the past. Lucille Asteros, who suffers from terminal vertigo and is in love with one of her sons. Yeah, Lucille, her idea of rivalry is a little one-sided, and even then, she has never faced anyone like Malory Archer. In the words of Illidan Stormrage, you are not prepared.
Oh, gosh.
One thing I can also bring up is, remember when Lucille couldn't get into a fancy restaurant because it's booked? She just left and went to Klimpy's. When Malory couldn't take a blimp ride, she called in a bomb threat. When she couldn't make it into Cez in the episode Live and Let Dine, that exclusive NYC restaurant with an Anthony Bourdain analog, she basically calls in a terrorist threat. And even when that terrorist threat turned out to be credible, she still dined anyways. Another thing we need to bring up is the fact that the Bluths, their antics will get you indicted for white-collar crime. Ride hard with Malory Archer, and you're in for murder and high treason. And that being said, a lot of the stuff that Lucille would put Kenneth through is stuff that he's used to on a daily basis, given how much he puts up with Jenna Maroney, Tracy Jordan, Jack Donaghy, even Liz Lemon sometimes. Lucille, simply put, is just another person that Kenneth has put up with. It's, if anything, she's Jenna Maroney possibly dialed up to 11. But Malory Archer, I don't think Jenna Maroney is the scale we need to use here. I would use Jenna Maroney, but there wouldn't be enough things on the rating meter. Just saying. And also, can we bring up the fact that every dinner party Malory Archer holds ends in, "Let's play hide the dead body"? I simply, remember what happened to Torvald Utney and that German hooker assassin? Oh, hey, that's a great idea for a video game. I'm gonna put a And the Prime Minister of Italy, Silvio Mascalzone. I don't know, some kind of Italian. I'm really craving meatballs, by the way.
Would it be like Malory Archer Go? Like you go somewhere and have to kill somebody?
In real life?
And then, yeah.
Miles, I'm sick of hearing you talk about Pokemon Go. Let it go, man.
Oh,
also, is there going to be a new unit of measure? Are we going to call them Mega Maronis then? Kilomaronis, if a single one is not enough?
On the subject of Silvio Mascalzone, did I say his name right? I know, like I said, some kind of Italian, right? She nursed a grudge for near 30 years, nursing it with venom, having sex with this guy once a year, because he may or may not have been responsible for possibly getting one of the numerous candidates of Sterling Archer's possible father murdered. Cersei Lannister, eat your heart out.
Okay, very strong opening arguments from both sides. I'm not sure which character is going to be the first one to wear away at Kenneth's sanity, but you advocates are doing a pretty good job of wearing away at mine, so.
Yay!
All right, now it is time for some rebuttals. Team Lucille, take it away.
First of all, you talked about how Kenneth is going to have problems like disposing of a body, the bodies that inevitably crop up at the end of Malory Archer's dinner parties. The thing is, that's not really anything new to Kenneth. There's a moment in the series where he...
Oh yeah, I forgot about the episodes of 30 Rock where he disposed of corpses.
There's a moment in 30 Rock where he offhandedly and cheerfully refers to a boy from his hometown that he buried alive. There's... We see that he carries a pistol in his page jacket. And I mean, it's clear that he's a little more Old Testament. You know, he believes in killing the deserving. And we see that he's willing to do whatever bizarre errands are needed to of him without really complaining.
I think that if he were put in a situation where his employer asked him to dispose of a corpse, or, for example, everybody shoot the prostitute before we set these bodies on fire, he might at least have a few questions about whether or not they were deserving and whether or not what Malory is doing is indeed from the Bible. And I'm not sure, given her knowledge of the Bible, she'd be able to answer those questions.
But see, the thing is, I feel as though you guys are approaching this as though Kenneth is just any person. And the thing is, he's not. Like,
He's not, I mean, the person part, very
sure,
questionable.
there's a number of reasons why he's not. But again, sort of what we brought up in our opening argument, he doesn't quit just because he gets overworked or because he does things he doesn't like. He quits when he feels as though he's been changed. And Lucille is so good at manipulating people that she's going to get in and change him. He's not even going to realize it until later. And at that point, he's going to be so horrified that he can't go back. He's going to be out the door. Meanwhile, he's been doing all sorts of odd jobs for Malory. He's fine with it because he knows it's his duty. You know, in any other case, you might have an argument, but with Kenneth Parcell, Lucille Bluth is the person to take him down.
I'm sorry. ISIS and working there does not corrupt and change people. Are you serious? Malory tricks people into being corrupt all the time. Do you think Cyril wanted to be a drug dealer? Do you think that is what...
or third world dictator of some sort?
Was what, yeah, the third world dictator. Do you think that was his dreams as a kid?
I don't know, man.
Like,
we see Cyril sliding down
you're full of shit.
We see Cyril sliding down a very slippery slope pretty early on in the show. You know, it's not too long, and it's without Malory's influence that he starts, you know, cheating on Lana and doing all sorts of weird stuff. Like, he was on that path a long time ago. Don't let the dapper outfit fool you.
You're wrong about that, first of all. And second of all, that place is the essence of corrupting people. You talk about the fact that Kenneth is not a regular person. That's fine. Guess what? Malory has way more experience dealing with more than human stuff than Lucille does. So if she ever gets an inkling of his true nature, she will be a little bit more prepared, is all I have to say.
She'll be a lot more interested. And also, Malory Archer has already destroyed 2 people. Remember Lana when she was fresh out of college and bright-eyed and wanted to change the world?
Yeah.
Look at her now.
How'd that work out for her?
And guys, back-to-back World War II veteran, heroin addict, and favorite sodomite, may he rest in peace, Woodhouse. Look what happened to Woodhouse.
I mean, I don't know that was necessarily due to Malory. I think that a lot of that came from Sterling.
Yeah.
No, because you know
he's
what?
Not people, apparently.
No, because Sterling was like all about Woodhouse as a father figure until Malory came back.
He called Woodhouse a dick at age 4. Like that's where we start.
When Malory came back, he was sobbing into Woodhouse's arms, saying she's not his real mom, and clutching him because he raised him for the first 5 years of his life. All right, Malory is the one who did that to Sterling Archer, and Sterling Archer in turn did that to Woodhouse, so Malory did that to Woodhouse.
You guys want to talk about crushing someone's psyche in childhood? Lucille possesses open disdain for Job. She constantly criticizes Lindsay's weight and appearance. She gives Buster such obsessive and overbearing mothering that he's essentially an eternal child whose psyche crumbles at the slightest touch. The only reason that she treats Michael as well as she does is because she usually wants him to do something for her. So what that shows us is that she's able to adapt her own particular brand of psychological torment and manipulation based on her target and based on what's going to be the most effective. Malory, the only real tool she has in her bag when it comes to dealing with her underlings is yelling at them or getting drunk and passing out on the couch.
Okay, no, because she also concocts elaborate plans to get them to do whatever she wants.
She reduced Nikolai Jakov, head of the KGB, and from what we gather in his past, quite the efficient person himself, into a sobbing, crying, sex-crazed, obsessed child who ends up dying, by the way. Remember that episode? And also, remember what happened to Len Drexler, also voiced by Jeffrey Tambor?
I'm glad you mentioned Jeffrey Tambor, Anton, because you talk about all the stuff about how Lucille ruined her kids and everything, and sure, she did a number on Buster, and yes, she doesn't like Job, but she didn't have much to do with Michael's idiosyncrasies, such as they are, because most of the shit Michael deals with is childhood stuff from his father. And that's what's important to remember about Lucille and her kids, is that she had help fucking up these children. She had so much help from George Sr., all right? Malory went it alone in terms of fucking up Sterling Archer, okay? That kid had the potential to be a really, really brilliant dude. You see the way he's a savant about certain things, his voracious reading, the way he knows definitions of words. That kid could have been a prodigy. She turned him into whatever the fuck he is today, and the Bluths are not exactly the brightest bulbs in the box. It's not that hard to play Michael and Lindsay against each other because Lindsay is kind of dumb and Michael didn't know there was money in the banana stand.
Well,
There's always money in the banana stand.
I feel as though you're missing the bigger point, Miles. Because the thing is, the reason that Archer turned out the way he did, the way Sterling, turned out the way he did, was because Malory was busy. Malory was a spy who left him in the care of Woodhouse, who is a competent caretaker, and she was off globetrotting as a super spy, which is neglectful, but it's not actively harmful and aggressive in the way that Lucille's is. Lucille had her whole life, and she focused all of that into spite. She focused all of that into manipulation, and Malory ended up with a messed up kid essentially on accident, but everything that Lucille does is calculated, it's piercing, and it's extremely manipulative.
And she's shown that she can manipulate people that aren't her children. I mean, she got into that women's Chinese gang in that really
she
really
got into the
bougie
Jade Dragon Triad, which was only made up of Chinese women, because that's how good she is at manipulating people.
Yeah, well, her level of manipulation is just as withering and painful as Asian mothers. I would know from experience.
All right, so that wraps things up for Team Lucille Bluth. Team Malory Archer, what do you have to say for yourself?
Dial M for mother. Well, okay, so the thing with Malory Archer is I think, how many times has she gotten Sterling almost killed at this point? She's actually put out a burn notice on him, remember that episode? And even though he had his fun in Odin for a while, especially after plowing Framboise, whatever.
Framboise.
Yes, the one who was called the Pele of Anal. Anyways, aside from that, he still went back to mother. I mean, if that's any level of destruction and fucked upness, is that she's destroyed this child so much that she can put a burn notice on him, she can get him killed, she can send him on all these life-threatening situations, and he still comes crying back to suck on her venomous teats.
They all fucking do. You say that the ISIS employees don't respect Malory and don't do what she says. Occasionally, they will not listen to her, but for the most part, they're with her. When she tells them to go on a mission, she goes on a mission. When she tells them to go steal a fucking diamond for no reason, and Lana immediately susses out, the selfish reasons behind them going, guess what? They still go.
And kill a bunch of French policemen along the way.
I think they're the only idiots that would. Otherwise, why would she keep such a gang of incompetents around? Oh yeah, her business is really shitty. It's a really shitty spy organization. I feel like Kenneth has shown that he's the kind of fascinating character that is so much darker and deeper than we are allowed to see, and the kinds of things that Malory and her crew are gonna possibly put him through, he's gonna wind up being creepily good at it if the joke
100%.
continues from 30 Rock, whereas Lucille can actually bring the kind of manipulate, she's gonna observe him, see what makes him tick, and then do what she needs to basically trick him into quitting.
Like what? Pageants? I mean, come on.
Hey,
have him be
that seems like a way to get Kenneth.
In that case, I would argue that Lucille doesn't have as much experience dealing with the darker side of humanity as Malory does.
She is
considering,
the darkness.
You know what? She's not a clone of Adolf Hitler. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, neither is Malory.
No, but she arranged to have one.
All right, so you mentioned earlier the burn notice that Malory put out on Archer. She did that when she was drunk, and immediately regretted it as soon as she was sober. Now, what that points out to me is the fact that despite the fact that Malory drinks all the time, she's kind of a lightweight, and that's going to impair her judgment, and it's going to impair her effectiveness, as we see it do time and again in Archer. Now, if you compare that to Lucille at one point gets into a drinking contest with Kitty, who is, of course, the woman that her husband is sleeping with, except decades younger than Lucille. And Lucille drinks her under the table.
I'm sorry, not to interrupt you, Dan, but did you use the Burn Notice episode to give your evidence that Malory's a lightweight? Because that's the one where she drank absinthe.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is she makes poor decisions that she wouldn't otherwise make when she's drunk. That doesn't speak well to how she's going to do in this little contest.
Didn't Malory Archer outdrink an entire room of Viet Cong
Yes.
guys?
And
yeah.
And Malory can be emotional in the short term, but in the long run, like Anton said with Silvio Mascalzone, in the long run, she'll murder the fuck out of you. This is a long game. If Malory sets her considerable intellect, no matter what her level of sobriety is, her considerable intellect on destroying Kenneth, he is going to be destroyed. Lucille, you talk about her as though she's, some kind of mastermind. Dude, Lucille just wants enough assets to be unfrozen so she can buy furs and drink vodka martinis, all right? She doesn't actually care about hurting the people in her life. She just wants to benefit herself. Malory actively cares about hurting people.
Well, this is true. I mean, Lucille is pretty vapid. She's gonna get bored. She'll say that she'll want to break Kenneth, but then she'll get bored. She'll get bored by happy hour.
I mean, if this is a contest about killing Kenneth or the opponent, then totally Malory, but that's not what it is. It's about making Kenneth quit. And you do that by like breaking him down. And sure, he is one of the weirdest locks to pick in terms of like figuring out his psyche and how to get rid of him. But Lucille, that's like Lucille's bag.
Your argument so far has been largely consist of, Lucille will do things that Malory would never do, such as put the lives of her children behind her own personal well-being. Oh, wait, Malory does that all the time.
Really? She seems to care an awful lot about Archer.
Anytime
I'm sorry, she was willing to let him die before giving her employees a cost of living adjustment.
And yet at the same time, like anytime we see him in actual danger in the field, she uses every asset that ISIS has in order to get his butt out of the fire.
Hey, man.
Yeah, she's just very impulsive.
You know what? At one point, when Michael says to Lucille, there have been a lot of lies in this family, Lucille responds, and a lot of love.
Yeah, it's a lie. It's a manipulation.
Because she's a sociopath.
No matter that Michael then responds with mostly lies, though. Okay, Lucille does care about her kids to a certain extent.
No.
All right, Miles, you and Anton keep bringing up Silvio Mascalzone. And I want to point out that, yes, she wanted to kill him, and yes, she bore a decades-long grudge against him. The reason she didn't kill him was because she enjoyed having sex with him. This is the man who killed the most likely candidate for Archer's father, and she didn't pull the trigger, literally, because she liked having sex with him. Like, how's that for willpower? How's that for conviction when it comes to breaking a person?
I say, how's that for the long game in terms of your personal satisfaction? She will do whatever it takes over whatever time frame.
Well, Kenneth is going to be out the door long before that happens.
No, he's not, because Lucille can't do shit to him. One more thing I want to bring up real quickly. You guys are trying to downplay a little bit the Malory-Sterling connection here, saying he was mostly raised by Woodhouse and that she mostly did her damage through neglect, etc.
Yeah. Yes and yes.
Well, you're wrong. The idea that she did most of her damage through neglect is unsupported by the evidence in front of us. And one thing I would like to put in front of our distinguished judge today is what I'm going to refer to in this instance as Exhibit A. Exhibit A is entitled Archer on the Importance of Mothering, and it is an article written and published on a website called Return of Kings, which, if you're not familiar with Return of Kings, it is one of the foremost, if not the foremost, men's rights activists websites on the internet.
Oh, great. God.
Man,
you went dark for this one, dude.
Oh, yeah, those douchebags.
Yeah, those douchebags.
If there's anyone listening, we don't need you. Bye.
Yeah, so on the Return of Kings, there was an article published about the various ways in which Malory messed up Sterling Archer. I quote a little bit from the article, she is a classic cold, self-absorbed woman. She left Archer in his most tender years to be raised by her butler Woodhouse. She would show up intermittently, bearing gifts, only to mock Archer while she was drunk. She clearly sees Archer as little more than... I'm sorry, I should quote it directly from the article because it's Return of Kings. She clearly sees Archer as little more than an object in the game of her life. The article continues to very accurately describe the relationship between Sterling Archer and Malory Archer. There is one awful bit where there's like talk about how Malory won't be able to teach him how to change the oil in a car because, you know, a woman. But beyond that, it's a really pretty accurate summary of the ways in which Malory Archer destroyed her son. So I'm just gonna say this. Malory Archer is such a destructive person that her relationship with her son was covered accurately on Return of Kings.
I think anything she does, again, we're looking at the difference between a person who is careless when it comes to taking care of her child and a person who intentionally goes out to shape other people into what they want. Like, we're talking about a difference in...
Do you want that baby quote again? I'll give you the baby quote again.
Do you want me to be reminded what happened to the bike of Sterling when he was younger? Oh, and also remember that one throwaway clip where she's dressed as Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and for some weird reason, he was dressed up as Hitler, or was it baby Hitler or Charlie Chaplin? Anyway.
Do you guys really want to get into a fight of mothers dressing up their sons? Because I don't think that's a fight you're going to win.
I'm sorry. So as I recall in that episode, Malory dressed Archer up in that clothing, then made him drink and play blackjack with her so she could take all his candy.
I have one
and then made fun of him for it.
I have one compound word for you, sir. Mother boy.
Okay, so
I forgot that. Oh, man.
They're both awful. That's not the argument. The argument is who's going to get Kenneth to, like, leave. And I kind of want... I don't really know that being awful to him is it.
No,
I think
it's not.
He really has to be
You're saying you're going to be... You're saying you're going to be awful to him, too. You're just saying you're going to be awful to him in more underhanded ways. I'm saying you don't even realize the depths of the ways Malory Archer is underhandedly awful.
Seems pretty straightforward.
I don't think that Kenneth has ever been invited over by Jenna Maroney and Jack Donaghy to a dinner party which would end up descending into let's hide the dead body and all of you are now accessories to murder and or treason.
Yeah, now we're all gonna go sell cocaine.
I think Kenneth would pull out his pistol.
May I
no
also
one was
bring up the
expecting him
fact
to carry.
There is a one moment in Archer history that is so dark and so well. They only reference it in the dreaded words 4th of July.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah. What is that? Tell the judge.
We don't know.
We don't know. All we know is there was a
awful.
suckling pig and there was some weird like bacchanalia in the break room involved.
It sounds like a weekend at the Parcell farm.
No.
Oh,
Frankly,
no.
it strikes me as being vaguely Lovecraftian.
Okay.
Yeah, a weekend at the Parcell farm.
All right. Very strong arguments from both sides. Very, very yelly, strong arguments from both sides. All right. So I think that just wrap things up, right? I think that. Let me say that again.
Yes.
Yeah, we're done, right?
Yeah.
Do we have thanks to give?
Time to start packing up the old show.
Yep. Oh my God! Wait. It's lightning round.
Oh, is that what that is?
I've been hit.
Wow.
Kit's been hit by lightning.
By thunder.
That's like. Okay. Oh wow.
We don't quite know how it happened. We don't know which one was the one to finally break Kenneth's spirit, but looks like somehow it happened. He has, in fact, turned in his blue blazer and his gun and the keys to the broom closet, which was the last scrap of property that he owned. And he packed up his bindle and hit the road. Incredible Hulk song slowly playing. But as was foretold, as soon as he steps foot outside of 30 Rockefeller Plaza, past the really, really expensive to maintain fountains that maybe he should have cut the budget from earlier, and past the enormous gaudy golden Art Deco statues that maybe he should have sold to buy himself a few more months. As the old woman predicted, a hole in reality opens and some very menacing looking tentacles start reaching out. But then the doors to 30 Rock open, and Malory Archer and Lucille Bluth come drunkenly stumbling out to yell one parting comment at the departing Kenneth. He takes this opportunity to run away and throw the two women in between him and the dark tendrils that have finally come to claim him and end his eternal life. But they end up getting grabbed instead and pulled through the hole in space-time, as so many characters do in my lightning rounds. And they are briefly held
Are
up.
they gonna be Jedi?
Wait,
Are
wait.
these two gonna be
Tentacles.
Jedi?
It's going to be single-person family feuds.
The mysterious entity that may or may not be Sluchard Have Anderson, we couldn't really tell, who may or may not have in the past made some deal with Kenneth to give him eternal life, but is now trying to claim his soul once more because his time on Earth is up, that kind of thing. Discards the two women who he is not looking for, just off to some forgotten corner of space-time, and when they finally do end up on some form of solid ground, they do find that they once again returned to New York City, and they see like, oh, good, we haven't actually gone too far off in space. But in time, it turns out that they've actually gone back about 50 years. It is, in fact, the 1960s. And although both of their companies are now gone,
Oh no.
they need
Colin.
to get
No.
work in a new line of work that does have no problem with them drinking on the job all day long. That's right. They get themselves some jobs in advertising. After just a few short months of working in the mailroom, both of our competitors have now clawed their way up the corporate ladder, kicking down all the Burt Petersons and Freddie Rumsons in their way. And after less than a year since they joined the company, they have now been made partners in the recently renamed advertising agency of Sterling, Cooper, Archer, and Bluth. But that's an awfully long name, don't you think? Lucille ran a company just called the Bluth Company for a while, and wouldn't those business cards look better if they just had a nice stylized B on the back? And also, Malory thinks that Archer Advertising Agency has a really nice ring to it, not to mention pretty much optimal placement in the phone book. So, before the end of the 60s, it's pretty clear that only one of these women will be left standing as the unquestioned overlord of the greatest fictional advertising agency of the decade. But who will it be? Will you be an account executive? A creative director? What accounts will you try to snag? Will you have any scandalous romantic flings with your coworkers? Mad Men has been off the air for over a year now, and I need my stories. Pander to me, goddammit.
I'll try. I hate that fucking show.
Oh. All right, minus 10 points. You want to play this game?
I'm just saying. I said I would try. I didn't say I would succeed.
Team Lucille Bluth went first in the normal round, so Team Archer is going to go first in the lightning round. Team Malory Archer, take it away.
Okay, so Lucille, yes, she's really good at destroying people, but I think she's also really good at keeping people in check. And when you have the what passes for a frat house bacchanalia sex party, that is Sterling, Cooper, Draper, Price, and partners and whatnot, I feel that Malory is going to be good at possibly whipping these assholes into check. Roger Sterling, you know, he's the philandering womanizer. He drinks a lot. I think she can possibly destroy his ego enough that he might actually possibly, you know, start going back to work. You know, something he hasn't done in 2 decades, I think, last time we checked. Don Draper, who is on a nihilistic rampage right now, she can possibly get him to be creative again. I feel that she can either get his wives, the ladies in his life, murdered, possibly. You know, this would be perfect for her to get Joan involved as becoming an accessory to murder when she shows up on, what's his first wife's name again? Played by
Emma Frost.
Sure. No, not my Emma Frost.
Are we talking about who's first wife, Dawn or Roger Sterling? Because
sorry, Dawn. Dawn's first wife.
yeah, that's Betty Draper. Emma
Betty,
Frost. Sorry,
yes,
my bad. Emma Frost.
She's gonna show up on Betty Draper's front door with a bouquet of flowers and a well-placed pistol underneath.
Oh,
and Dawn's
he's gonna Joker her.
She's gonna Joker. She's gonna kill her. This won't be the killing joke. This will just
actually
be
that's
the
more like
killing.
Terminatoring her with the flowers. Sorry.
There we
Say
go.
Terminatoring her?
Yes, Terminatoring her. What's the problem?
Why does this say terminating her?
Well, at which point she will walk into the bedrooms of the children of Dawn and kill both of them. because she will view his attachment to his old family as a liability and something that prevents him from becoming the creative mind that she wants him to be. And and his wife in California, yeah, she'll probably stage a car accident.
Yeah, I think that, Malory would definitely be best served as an executive. That's her best role. In terms of, she has run a business for a while, and while it may not be the most successful thing in the world, she manages to keep herself afloat largely because of the complicated web of sexual entanglements she's engaged in, from Nikolai Jakov to Len Trexler, head of Odin.
Having sex with Pam.
Having sex with Pam.
And that one guy, the Swiss cheese dude.
Well, there's the Prime Minister of Italy, there's the one dude who runs the Irish mobs. I mean, she is all over the place with that shit, and she stays afloat because of her manipulation of all these men, which, in the context of Mad Men, a woman using male privilege to actually run the show is very appropriate. However, an underrated part of her game in this scenario, I would argue, is Malory's artistic and creative contributions. We know that before she ever met up with Wild Bill Donovan and became a secret agent, killing a man in Tunisia, that she was an aspiring actress. She's got that creative spark. We also saw her co-write a screenplay with Cyril that was picked up by a major film studio.
Well,
okay.
What was it? It was like the part
that was Mandingo 2, the enslaving. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Seems appropriate for the 60s.
Yeah, she's totally in touch with this particular era of the zeitgeist, dude. All right, Malory Archer would totally succeed in a creative endeavor in the 60s, and that's if she didn't, as Anton pointed out, simply have her opposition murdered.
All right. Team Lucille Bluth, what do you have to say to that?
Lucille basically does that very same thing, working her way to the top of a company by getting in with a successful businessman. Successful, if not, a little dishonest. But
this one doesn't have a twin brother. You're screwed.
I mean, that's just one less person for her to screw, but she's still...
That's a shorter road to the top. When we see the Bluth Company in Arrested Development, we see that it's going under because of embezzlement and because of corporate malfeasance. But the thing is, this is the 1960s. The SEC is not the powerhouse that it used to be. And when it comes to people in positions of power within corporations misusing that power, I mean, all we have to say is, Mr. Campbell, who cares? Now, this sort of...
See, that's the kind of pandering I was hoping for.
This sort of underhanded behavior is much more accepted, much more open in the period that we're talking about than it was in the early 2000s when Arrested Development started up. And you guys talk about how Malory was in this era and she's of this era's zeitgeist. I will point out that Lucille Bluth is exactly as old as Malory is. and obviously has the same connection. And in fact, while Malory Archer may have at one point been an aspiring actress, Lucille was actually part of the USO for a while. And we see that she's able to sing and dance in such a way that it sparks the memories of General J.K. Simmons, even though it's been, 20 years since he's seen her. So clearly she has a flair for the performance. She has a way of catching people's eye and making them remember what it is that she does. And all of that stuff is really, really good when it comes to advertising.
Malory is well versed in office politics, which is a very dangerous water you need to traverse when you're in advertising, particularly the advertising company in Mad Men. And if she can, I know this is a bit of a stretch to say, but if she can rein in an Adolf Hitler clone, sex-crazed, sturdy bisexual, a really crazy pyromania, rich girl sort of thing with all sorts of unnamed kinks, if she can get them to still show up to work eventually and still get the job done, I'm pretty sure Sterling Cooper is going to be a piece of cake.
All right, very well done. Those are two giant piles of nonsense I have to sort through now.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to take a few minutes to think this over. If logic fails me, I'll probably just resort to a bunch of substance abuse and then just pass out and see what happens. I'm going to start working my way through a bottle and see if I find an answer at the end of it. Talk amongst yourself.
Like you'd recognize a vegetable that wasn't wrapped in a Monte Cristo sandwich.
So when I asked for cucumber-sized slices, which one of you sent the zucchini?
Oh, that episode.
Is this just going to be our quote-only little free round?
Hey, there's actually numerous threads where it's like, guess the quote, Malory Archer or Lucille Bluth.
Oh
Yeah.
shit, that sounds like a fun
Yeah.
game.
So earlier we were having a discussion about which of these three shows is the best, or I suppose like what order you would rank these shows in.
Yeah.
Now, Miles, you were saying that you put Arrested Development on the bottom.
I love Arrested Development. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic show. For me, I would rank 30 Rock above it and Archer above that, just because Arrested Development is funny, but it's not crazy. 30 Rock is fucking insane.
Okay, so you like a little
And
crazy.
Archer-
That's fine.
Archer is even more insane. Like, it's just like, I think Arrested Development is very funny, but I think the other two shows are also very funny and also include like immortals and cyborgs. So that's more my style, man. You know.
Anton,
This
how
is
do you
true.
how do you fall on that?
Well, I
ranking?
hate to say this, but I kind of I side with Miles. Like, I love Arrested Development, I really did, but their fourth season was a little lackluster. I did like that they took advantage of the Netflix format where you have to binge watch it because a lot of these storylines are happening concurrently, like Feast for Crows and Dance with Dragons. But it was ambitious. While 30 Rock knew when to end it on a high note. Also, to this day, I am still saying a lot of Jenna-isms and Avery Jessup's mother's isms, such as, I have the high cheekbones of an evil Disney queen.
That is
And
a
of
great
course,
line.
there's Archer, which, because of the fact that it's animated, they have the budget to go ridiculous.
Why do you hate to side with me?
So I will just sound like I'm just a yes man. I mean,
Okay.
you know, I have my opinions too. Like,
Okay,
Judy
just-
B
just
can
make it-
ruin my weekend.
I have to say, I put Arrested Development over both of those, largely because Arrested Development makes me wish I was smarter. I wish I was smart enough to come up with that show, but I feel like I get smarter anytime I watch it. I think 30 Rock is on the bottom of that list for me because I feel like I really enjoy a lot of their jokes, and some of their episodes are incredibly solid. But I feel like there's always at least a couple of moments in every episode where a joke just falls totally flat for me. And I feel like that almost never happens in Archer, and I don't think it ever happens in Arrested Development for me.
Well, that's
I-
true, but I will say this much. The thing I enjoy about 30 Rock is you can look it up online. People who used to work or still work for NBC, apparently the writers of 30 Rock have spliced in inside jokes that only network employees would understand. So the fact that we still get a laugh out of it, and then there are references here and there, such as, you know, was it Brian, what was the name of that news anchor? Like, oh no, he's drunk again.
Brian Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Brian Williams, yeah.
being drunk again.
I loved his character on 30 Rock, by the way.
Yeah.
I just think Arrested Development suffers from a really unfortunate dearth of Tracy Morgans.
Oh, gosh.
Jenna Maroney's.
And Tina Fey's, frankly. I mean, it's like I love everybody in there,
Also
but
the
like
most talented Baldwin brother of them all.
sure, but I mean like
Billy Baldwin?
Jason Bateman's fine.
No way, dude.
But-
You're looking over Tobias Funke and you're looking over Joe Bluth, and like those two can carry any series in the world.
They're
Arnett,
fine,
man.
but I don't,
Will
I don't know,
Arnett,
man.
that's all you need.
Kit, you haven't. Kit, you haven't weighed in on this yet.
Oh, I hate to side with Dan because fucking Dan, am I right?
Oh, he's the worst.
But no, I think Arrested Development is my favorite, or maybe right now it feels like my favorite because I haven't seen it in so long, and every time I see it like that, I'm just like, oh fuck, this show is so smart, and like the jokes like catch me off guard.
Colin, I know you want to give your verdict, but you have to weigh in on this ranking of three shows.
Okay, won't that like taint people's opinion of me as a judge if they think I?
Oh, maybe.
I mean,
oh yeah, man.
Depends on how you
for
roll.
me, I think it's close. The number 1 and 2 are very close. The third is a bit more of a distant third for me, but I still think all three shows are really good. I think for me, it probably goes Arrested Development, then Archer, and then 30 Rock, a few other pegs down. I think that they're all good. The only issue I have with 30 Rock is, as I say, it's just funny a good portion of the time. And funny is great, but it's kind of like just a pile of jokes sometimes, and it's not really like have as good of like plots and other things going on. And the other ones are just really great though. But I think that Archer sometimes is in love with its own jokes a little bit sometimes in a slightly annoying way and kind of drags them out a little too much.
I
See that?
completely agree, Mr. Judge, sir. I definitely don't have a totally different ranking of those shows.
Very strong arguments from both sides. This is a very close one. Again, the characters are very similar in a lot of ways. The main difference being, as was pointed out, Malory is a bit more, I think, intelligent and competent, and her ability to undermine people is a bit bigger and more overt. Lucille, whether or not it's actually true, definitely presents kind of not knowing what's going on around her all the time. But that being said, she's still incredibly good at manipulation, and that's what this match is all about. And her manipulation is a bit more subtle as opposed to Malory's. And so sometimes, there's just a giant list of, well, this person did all this and this person did all this, and it kind of just evens out after a while. But I don't really think that's the case in these ones. I was going over the examples, and there are some really good examples from Malory Archer, but I honestly think that there are so many more that the team Lucille was able to come up with that are so much more subtle. And I mean, it's undeniable that Malory really, really, really messed up Sterling. And that one line with baby Seamus was so good.
And so true, and so
it's
damning.
so true. That really makes me want to give it to you guys, and I'm very close to doing that. But I think that just
I'm thinking about what you're doing. You're about to vote for Dan.
You know what?
Just think about what you're doing.
Miles, it's been a while. I think we can give him one.
Oh God.
Fine.
The
I gotta
national
give this one
nightmare
to
is
Lucille
over.
Bluth. Your examples were amazing. Your argument was great. You had so many good arguments that you brought forth. I think that point that you brought up about Kenneth being more disturbed by the subtler threats and the changing of someone as opposed to the more overt abuse was very well taken. And I think Malory is much more of a fan of the overt abuse than Lucille is.
Yeah, that was a really good point.
Yeah.
I have to admit.
Well, you guys did not make it easy for us at all.
Yeah, like I had to pull that one out because I was like sure you guys were gonna win.
You guys are
like,
jerks.
Kenneth, what can I say about Kenneth and his Lovecraftian ways?
Well, Anton, it's such a pleasure to have you back on. I'm
Thank
really
you.
glad to be able to make this work.
Thank you so much for coming on, Anton.
Of course, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm sorry I failed you.
It's okay. There's always money in the banana stand.
Oh yeah, about that.
Anton, you want to plug anything before you go?
Yes, please.
Yes.
There's really nothing to plug because all my stuff is off air at the moment.
Well, you should all go become patrons of Unspoiled. And if you do, you can go back and listen to the podcast that Anton and I did with Natasha about Season 6 of Game of Thrones, which was fucking fun.
This is true. We play a game. It's a variation on Two Truths and a Lie. And it ranges from everything to Lady Stoneheart showed up to, oh no she didn't, to guess who pulled off someone's face.
I refused to watch the show, and they both watched it, so they asked me questions.
That sounds so
Multiple
fun.
choice questions about what happened. But
Okay.
Anton, you also do a lot of work for Project Fandom.
Yes,
so
I do. I also do.
that's
I
on.
review right now. I am currently still actively reviewing Daredevil. I just wrapped up season 2.
So I think I'm going to start off the thanks with something Vander Turner recently said because it has to do with Game of Thrones. And
Oh,
Anton's
yes.
here. Vander Turner asked, in light of the newest Game of Thrones revelations about Jon's heritage, that changes a lot of what Team Katniss said in their opening.
In my mind, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't really matter, and he would still get killed by a woman who shoots missiles from her bow. So it's fine.
Yeah,
Whatever,
Judge.
We still won. So
I know you
it's all
did.
good.
I'm still
Ah.
still angry about that.
More tweets. Grant Woodward retweeted Gameable's post about the Stitch Toothless match. I don't know if Grant listens to this podcast.
Oh, Grant Woodward is the host of the Saving the Game podcast.
Oh, okay.
Which is closely associated with the Gameable podcast.
Right. Matt Lawrence retweeted Stitch Toothless and thanked us for the shout out.
Yes, he was the crazy person who was
The amazing
biking from
crazer.
Canada to San Diego that we
Nice.
we talked about a couple of episodes ago. And good luck to you, man. I've been looking at some of your photo journal, and you're getting some great pictures of the West Coast landscape.
Yeah.
Man, still a crazy person.
He said he loves everything we do.
Oh, you're the best,
you.
dude.
I believe his charity, for those who are interested, is Coast to Coast Comics.
And the Indulgery said he waved his battle ladle in support of Stitch. So thank you.
Not his battle ladle.
Oh my god.
Battle. Oh
All right,
gosh.
that's gonna be
Plus
the first...
5 to dexterity.
Oh shit!
It like shittily.
God damn it, Anton!
How did we go this long?
Now I have to
without-
drink more.
How did we go this long without making a D&D?
You know what? I didn't start it. I realized it
Oh.
halfway through, and I didn't want to say anything because I was like, "This is good."
Thank God you were here.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do an episode without
Dodge
you.
the
So,
bullet
so
there, man.
oddly,
Yeah.
the episode about these two may have had our least amount of drinking in it of any. of
Right.
us.
Wow.
I mean, speak for yourself.
Oh. All right, and then on Tumblr, Ross Scott once again reblogged Mal versus Han, and then also Stitch versus Toothless. So thank you so much. I
Yeah.
think Tumblr really helps us get some views because of the tag system.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We have one new review. This is from someone named Megan Bobness.
Who would that
I'm
be?
going to guess it is
I bet she's lovely.
podcast famous frequent host of the show, Megan Bob.
Oh, no way!
So the review is titled Magical Happiness Hour, and she says, I love this show. I love the structure. I love the formality of the arguments and the rapid breakdown into chaos that then gets brought back to order. I love the long-standing relationships of all the hosts, and especially the good-natured rivalries they've got and their investment in winning. I would say which host is my favorite, but truly, they're all my absolute favorites.
It's me.
Yeah, it's
I
totally
was gonna
Kit.
say it's Kit. We all know it's
It's
Kit.
totally Kit.
There's a Lucille Bluth quote for this. I love all my children equally. I don't care much for Dan.
I don't care much for Dan.
Dan, you're my
everyone knows-
third least favorite brother.
That's right.
Everyone knows her favorite host is me because I have suffered and lost
That's
with
true.
her.
I love the dedication to preparation and scripting. I love the delivery and comedic timing everyone brings. I love that it's woven together by the Arbiter, who sets the tone and paints the scene for each matchup. Aside from the wonders of Smash Fiction itself, as if that wasn't enough, Extraordinary League is rollicking good times. I've never done tabletop, and I question whether I have the dedication to do it, but I would listen to this for hours upon hours. It's like going on a lengthy and insane adventure with the poor Impulse crew. Whatever they do, you'll never see it coming, and you'll be damn delighted every time. Listen to this podcast, and for a magical hour plus, you will float on a cloud of purest nonsense and utter delight.
We're trying to keep the plus down on the hour plus.
Oh man,
Yeah.
we're trying so hard.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of Smash Fiction. Next week, we have Ellen Ripley versus Sarah Connor.
Smash Fiction is produced by Miles Schneiderman, with logo design by Colin Mulcairn.
Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod for our theme song, which is called Hitman. You can find his work at www.incompetech.com.
You can follow the Smash Fiction podcast on Twitter at SmashFicPodcast and search for us on Facebook and Tumblr.
Subscribe on iTunes, and if you leave us a good review, we shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
If you have any suggestions, feedback, or other contributions, send them to us at smashfictionpodcast@gmail.com and help us continue the fight. Dude, I haven't seen anything from Lucille that's anywhere near to that picture that Malory took with herself and her dog naked. She was naked, not the dog. I guess the dog was naked too. But
That would be funny
Does the
if
collar
dog-
count as naked?
That would be great if the dog was wearing the Yoko Ono outfit.
but the thing you have to
Hold on.
remember is
Does
that
a collar count as naked? That was not a rhetorical question.
yes, it does.
Okay, good. All right, fine. So I guess that
the thing
McDonald's
you have
was
to-
right for kicking me out.
The thing you have to remember is that
It neither counts as shirt nor shoes.
Look,
So
So
where can
in
I
fa-
get one of those like 5-cent hummingbirds? wait, are they alive? I don't want them if they're not alive.
Ask whoever came up with weird Southern expressions.
Yeah, I'm not paying more than a penny for a dead humming.
you paid like fucking $50 for the Necronomicon, and you won't like pay a nickel for a dead hummingbird you can bring back to life? Jesus Christ.
Hey, in this economy,
Fair enough.
no
just
Necronomicon
dead.
can bring this economy back to life, am I right?
Don't.
Ah, you beat me
topical.
to it!
Top-
You beat
Once
me to it, you
again,
asshole!
We are faced with the typical Mulcairn dilemma: what to do with a dead hummingbird? Eat it or bring it back to life?
Don't get me started on zombie hummingbirds. They're the worst.
Oh, we'll be here all night.